Hello everyone, my name is Dylan and I'm here to help you prepare for the upcoming SATs papers. If you're watching this video in 2024, then it's one of a few videos we have in a row now every single day up until the end of the SATs papers, and we're going to come to you with a video that is about the test that's about to happen. So for example, today's video is all about how to pass the GPS paper, because on Monday you have the GPS paper. Then tomorrow we'll release a video about comprehension. Tuesday and Wednesday we'll release maths videos, because that's what's happening the day after. So it's that last minute prep. Hopefully you find it useful, and if you do, please like this video, please subscribe and share this as much as possible. We love reading the comments, seeing how you guys are finding it useful. It makes us want to make more videos, guys. So thank you so much for your support so far. If you're watching it in the future, everything I say is still relevant. So let's dive straight into how to pass the GPS paper in your SATs week. So what score do you need to pass? Now I want to stress to you, this changes every year. I have taken the 2023 data that we now have because it happened last year. We will not know the pass mark for the 2024 papers or any subsequent papers before they are sat and before all of the results are released. So I just want everyone to know that this is not for the 2024 paper, but what we can do is look at previous data, previous pass marks, and get an idea. So in 2023, to get 100 on your scaled score, I've done a whole video on everything you need to know about the SATs and explain what scaled scores are, so go and have a look at that. This gets you what we call age expected. Now this is what's called a pass in inverted commas. I say pass in inverted commas because there's not really a pass or a fail when it comes to the SATs, okay? And I don't want you guys to get yourselves worked up thinking about, oh, I need to pass, I might fail. That language doesn't help, okay? And I would say that it's not useful to think that way. But to get 100 scaled score, which is bang in the middle, and it, like he says here, age expected, where we hope to be, and if you're below that, it doesn't mean you're not where you should be, it's just a bit lower than what the average score might be. You need 36 out of 70. This is just a little bit over half. If you're pushing for greater depth level, to show that you've reached the next level in your learning, you want 110 scaled score, you're going to have to get 55 out of 70. So what does this mean? How do I get these marks? Because the name of this video is how to pass. So how can I get these 36 marks out of 70? Well, GPS is broken up into two different papers. We have paper 1, which are just questions on grammar, punctuation and spelling. This is where you get the bulk of marks. This is out of 50, okay? And then you do a spelling test, which we've done a video on again. I would go and watch that. It's good practice. I go through this paper, the 2023 spelling paper. You get asked to spell 20 words. And then what happens is these two scores are combined, added together to get a score out of 70, where you need to make 36. Now, your mind is probably whirring over thinking, oh, okay, I need to get to about 36. How can I do that? Well, let's say, for example, your spelling is amazing. Let's say you get 20 out of 20. That means you only need to get 16 out of 50, or in 2023 anyway, to pass the GPS paper. So play to your strengths, okay? If your spelling's fantastic and you know you're going to get 18, 19, 20, you only need to actually get way less than half marks on the 50 paper. Okay, something to bear in mind. Equally, if your spelling isn't as good, which is completely acceptable, by the way, lots of adults have poor spelling. It's very normal to find spelling tricky. Well, guess what? You can still pass this paper, even if you get 0 out of 20 in the spelling. Because like I said before, you need 36. So you could get 36 out of 50 by revising really well and understanding the grammar, punctuation and spelling questions that could come up in the first paper. It's more likely what will happen is, let's say you get about 10 on the spelling out of 20, and let's say over here you get about 26 out of 50. That's a more kind of what we'd expect to see from someone who just passed. So 26 out of 10 is 36. This would be a pass. You only need about half marks. But what I'm saying is, if you are strong in one area, you can make up the marks somewhere else, because these are combined to give you a pass mark that we just discussed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you my best last minute tips to try and tip you over the edge to get you those precious few marks. What traps to avoid, can't get my words out, yeah, just some advice. So let's do that. Let's look at some questions, and these are all going to be from those 50 mark tests, okay? So the ones where it's all about grammar and punctuation. My first tip is, you might get ahead of yourself on the day. You get a bit excited and you think, oh, I know adjectives describe a noun. Awesome. Unfortunately the weather was terrible. Cool. Terrible absolutely describes the noun, which is the weather. I've circled an adjective. You might move on. Read the questions carefully. That's my number one top tip right here. If you want to pass a GPS paper, read the question carefully, because this will get you a 0, even though you have correctly circled an adjective. Why? Because it's a plural. Circle the adjectives. that tells us there's 2 or more. There could be 3, there could be 4, there could be 5. To get a mark on this, you need to circle all 3 adjectives. So my number 1 top tip to pass a GPS paper is to actually read the questions carefully. If you just scan through and see the bold bits here and adjectives and get ahead of yourself, and even if you do fantastic work and actually circle an adjective, you're going to get 0 unless you get all of them, because this question's asking for more than one. So that's my number 1 tip there. Don't just rush into a question. Yes, we have to keep up the pace, but we can still read a question carefully. We get about a minute per question. Okay, so the difference between us reading this question carefully and jumping and getting it wrong was maybe it takes 5 seconds for someone to go, oh, adjectives, circle terrible. And it might take them 10 seconds to go, oh, circle all the adjectives. Cool, well, I've got to get more. And then you can still get the mark. So it's not going to save you, it's not going to cost you loads of time just to read the question carefully. So that's really, really important. Here's another one. Which sentence is a command? Now, the reason I've put this in is because commands, questions, exclamations, statements rather, they always come up. So the different types of sentences. So what I would do is I would learn those different types of sentences. When do I know that a sentence is a question? When do I know that it's a command? When do I know that it's an exclamation? When do I know that it's a sentence? And there's a really easy way to remember if it is a command. Okay, so if it's a command, it usually starts with a bossy verb. We call them imperative verbs. So let's think. These questions here, do they any of them start with a bossy verb, or we're telling someone to do something? That's why it's called a bossy verb. Do this, write it down, go as fast as you can. Well, the answer is yes. Look, run as fast as you can. That is a command. You're telling someone to do something. You're ordering them to do it, and it starts with that bossy verb. Run as fast as you can. The rest here are statements. I know you can win this race. A statement. Just a sentence. I hope I don't drop the baton. A statement. The relay race will be next. A statement. None of these are telling someone to do anything. And if we're getting into the deeper understanding of why it's a command, look for those bossy verbs at the start. Okay, so you can use deduction, get rid of answers you know aren't commands. If you weren't sure what a command was, you could still get a mark here, which is going to help you pass this test by using deduction, because you know the others are statements. So even if you didn't know what a command was, but you knew that what a statement was, you could actually get to the right answer as well. So multiple ways here to pass this GPS paper. Use test technique like deduction, but also learn the basics. And I would say command, statements, questions, exclamations. That's something you can very easily in about 2 minutes learn and apply to pass this test. Let's look at another one. I'm actually going to let you try and solve this yourself. See if you get the right answer. Now, keeping with the theme of how can we actually pass this test, these kind of questions here, we should never, ever, 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 ever leave them blank. Now, my number 1 tip is to not leave any questions blank anyway. Always have a guess. But these ones, it is unacceptable if you leave it blank. Okay, I'm not trying to be horrible, not trying to be harsh. But the reason why is because you don't even have to write anything down. You just have to literally draw up lines. Now, my number 1 tip would be to work it out. Okay, and the way to work it out would be to work systematically. Try them. You will always get a root word with either prefixes or suffixes in this test. So if you learn them and how to do it, you're probably going to get a mark. So for example, with social, I would try all of them. I'm going to struggle to say this. You know what I'm like sometimes with my words. Social-ish. Social-all. Social-all? No. Socialize. That sounds good. Social ship. Noticed I still checked all of them, even though I thought the third one was good. That's good practice, okay? Relationship, I remember that one. I don't need to test those. If you know the answer because you remember the suffixes, don't waste time going through it again. Child-all, obviously not. Childish. And then we have seasonal left over. There might be that you didn't know what seasonal was. But it didn't matter for us, did it? Because we knew the other 3. And that leaves us with 1 left. Now, the point being here, even if you didn't know it, just join some lines. Do a guess. You're not going to get marked down because you got something wrong. You're just going to get 0. If you leave a question blank, you get 0. If you get a question wrong, you get 0. But guess what? If you have a go, you might get it right. That mark might tip you over to pass the test. So that's my number 1 tip. Well, they're all number 1 tips. So I guess it's my 4th tip. So here we go. Insert a comma in the correct place. Now, I have a really important thing that you can do when you're trying to find where a comma goes in a sentence. And again, you've spent a long time learning why we use commas. We put commas in lists. We put commas at the start of a clause, at the end of a front of the verb, or rather at the start of a sentence. We put commas in speech before we use our speech marks, or inverted commas. Loads of different ways where we can use commas. Okay, relative clauses as well in the middle of a sentence. You probably know all that. If your mind goes blank in the test and you think, oh gosh, I just can't tell. Well, there's a reason why there's so many spaces here, because it's basically trying to give you no hints at all where the comma would go. Now, if we read it like a robot, we will be planting seeds, making a pond, and looking for snails. It's hard to tell where the comma goes, but no one reads like that, guys. So what I want you to do, if you're stuck on a question where it's asking you to put a comma in, read it naturally and see where your voice naturally breaks. Now, this isn't a scientific method. This isn't always going to get the right answer, but if you're stuck and you want to pass this test, it's a good test to do. We will be planting seeds, making a pond, and looking for snails. It's a list. So we're starting to think with the items of the list. Where did my voice stop and pause? We will be planting seeds, making a pond, and looking for snails. It's here after seeds. And that natural pause in our voice is a real good hint as to where that comma could go. So if we weren't sure how to work out the items in this list, we can literally go to our next level, which is read the sentence. Where's the break? Where did I pause? And you would get a mark for this question, even if you were unsure. Some of you will be out there going, I knew it. Planting seeds is one thing in the list, making a pond is the other, and looking for snails. And the word and ends our list. Cool. If you knew that, you got a mark anyway. If you didn't, the pause, where we wait with our voice, that could get us a mark, which tips us to pass this test. My next hint, insert a pair of brackets. Now, when we're trying to find where brackets go, it's similar to commas, but I have a different technique. And what I do is I whisper, and hopefully you can hear me on this mic when I whisper. And I put the brackets, if you look at the microphone here, don't look at the microphone. If you look at the camera in the bottom corner, my hands make brackets. I put them like this and I'm whispering. Now, whenever I whisper, anything outside the brackets should make sense on its own. So where could the brackets go here? Charlotte, my voice breaks again and it pauses naturally here. Charlotte, who usually, that's a good sign. Charlotte, who usually hated getting wet, loved splashing about in the sea. So I think on my test of my whispering, this is the clause which we put in the extra information in the brackets. If the brackets go there, here's the ultimate test and how we can actually make sure we get the mark or not. We should be able to read the rest of the sentence and it still makes sense. So let's take out those brackets. Charlotte loved splashing about in the sea. That is a main clause that makes sense on its own. The bit in the brackets that I've put in is the extra information. It's a relative clause with the relative pronoun who. So now I'm going to test it with my whisper technique. Charlotte, who usually hated getting wet, loved splashing about in the sea. And we can test that the rest of it works on its own whilst putting the extra information in the brackets. That's a really good test to see, and another technique to try and put brackets in the right place to pass the GPS paper. I wanted to talk about formality. I hate these questions. I don't know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Do you feel confident with looking out for formality? This is a very common question type. Which sentence is the most formal? Now, I want to give you a top tip. If you've not heard this tip before, it's the best thing to do for formality. If you're looking for something that's formal, the easiest way to get rid of sentences which are very informal is to look for apostrophes for contraction. That is not deemed very formal at all. For example, if the word was it's, for it to be more formal, we would put it is. If you're writing a formal letter, you shouldn't use apostrophes for contraction. So straight away, we should be able to get rid of two sentences. Which ones are they? And then I want you with the ones left over to pick what you think is the most formal. See if you can get a mark here using this technique. Okay, so straight away, hopefully you got rid of number one because it has can't, which is apostrophe for contraction. Here is there's no room. Again, it's another apostrophe for contraction. We don't like them. Okay, so get rid of the first sentence. There's another one at the bottom which we can get rid of. It's time. We should have said it is. This was the literal example I gave you here. And now we're left with two. Now my point here is we can definitely get rid of the apostrophes with contraction. So we've got 50-50 now, even if we had to guess. More likely to get a mark, more likely to pass this paper. Then we can just read them. And it becomes a bit more just intuitive. Which one sounds more formal? Which one we're looking at vocabulary choice. It is essential. This is a good vocabulary choice that sounds formal. To take your belongings with you. Okay, now let's look at the other one. Please pack. Please and essential. Which one sounds more formal? Pack up all your stuff. Stuff or belongings. Which one sounds more formal? So then we go to simply picking between word choice. Okay, so two levels to working out which sentence is the most formal. It's firstly get rid of any contractions, that's the easy part. Then start comparing similar words and which have similar meanings, but one's obviously a lot more formal. In this case, the second one is the more formal. Belongings is way more formal than stuff. Okay, so it goes from an easy way to get rid of sentences to almost like a vibe. What's the vibe of the sentence? Is the vibe formal or not? And it's definitely the second one here is the most formal of all of those. The last tip I want to talk about, by the way, you're going to have a question at the end, so do stick around because I want your answers in the comments. If you're in this test and your aim is to try and pass, you're trying to get your 36 marks out of 70, so you know you can leave some questions. Imagine there's only 10 seconds left on the clock. Okay, which of these questions would you pick to do? Which of these questions do you think it's most sensible to try and do in a tight amount of time if you had to pick one? Now, my point here is some questions are harder than others. And I can't tell you which question you find harder. You need to know this already. You might be unbelievably good at tense, but really bad at knowing where dash is going in a sentence. In general, I'd say most people would know where a dash goes, using my technique earlier, quicker than knowing how to rewrite words in different tenses, especially because there's loads of different tenses to understand. Okay, past progressive, simple past, whatever it is, future perfect. There's so many tenses to learn. You don't actually need to answer those if you want to pass, because we know we can drop 34 marks. Okay, so my technique here is, if you have a choice and a timer that's going down, 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 go to the easier questions, guys. Put the dash in the correct place. Dash is for extra information. The house was in need of repair. Dash. The windows were broken and the roof was leaking. We've separated it. This is the main clause. Then we've dashed here with an extra information at the end. That was simple. Here I've got to write. If I get my spelling wrong, I don't get a mark. If I get the tense wrong, I don't get a mark. There's way more opportunity to lose marks here. So my last tip is to just be really clever about which questions you choose to answer first. Okay? Simple as that. So before I go into this last one, well, I'll show you it really quickly. But guys, I really want you to send this video around. I want you to share this video as much as possible because the GPS paper is tomorrow as of this video dropping. And I want as many people to see it as possible because it might help some people go from being just below the pass mark to just past the pass mark. Okay, so don't sit there thinking, I need to get 36. It might be 38. It might be 40 you need. It might be 32. We don't know. So try and answer as many questions as you can, get as many marks as you can. But this is a good hint and a good tip, right? To try and get over that, to try and get an extra couple of marks, which might be vital. Right, your turn. In the comments, I want you to tell me, rank the difficulty from easiest to hardest. We just talked about if you're running low on time, do questions that are easier. There is no right or wrong answer here. A, B, and C. For you personally, rank them from the easiest to the hardest. Okay? So you might be B is the easiest, then A, then C is the hardest. You put B, A, C in the comments. Let me know down below. Like this video, subscribe. We've got another one tomorrow all about reading. Come back, watch it. Guys, daily videos until the end of the SATs. I hope it helps you a lot. See you next time.